Welcome to Lore Revolution, the show where we look at the production histories of our favourite factions, characters and technologies from the realm of sci-fi and fantasy. So far we've mostly looked at various factions, but this time we're narrowing our focus to a single character, Captain James T Kirk. One of the reasons I started this little series was to explore how the intentions of writers are sometimes misunderstood or distorted by the larger popular consciousness, and that is certainly very true in the case of Captain Kirk. The character of Captain Kirk was of course created by Gene Roddenberry following the original Star Trek pilot, The Cage. While The Cage failed to impress network execs, a second pilot for the show was commissioned. Roddenberry and his producing partner Gene L. Kuhn went about rethinking the show, and as original Captain Pike actor Jeffrey Hunter had decided to pursue other roles, the decision was made to create a new captain. Among the names considered for this new captain were Captains January, Drake, Flagg, Thorpe, Richard, Patrick, Raintree, Boone, Hudson, Timber, Hamilton, Hannibal, Neville, and North. Eventually, however, they settled on James Tiberius Kirk. Often shortened to James T Kirk, the infamous headstone in the second pilot which displays his name as James R. Kirk was a straight-up oopsie on the part of the props department. Gene Roddenberry often used the excuse that Gary Mitchell, despite his godlike powers in the episode, was still a fallible human who messed up the name. Although I personally kind of find that a bit silly. In Gene Roddenberry's original pitch for the show, when describing the character for his starship captain, originally called Robert April before Captain Pike, read thusly: The skipper, about 34, academy graduate, rank of captain. A shorthand sketch of Robert April might be a space-age Horatio Hornblower, lean and capable both mentally and physically, a colourful, complex personality. He is capable of action and decision that converge on the heroic, but at the same time, lives a continual battle with self-doubt and the loneliness of command. As with men of the past, Drake, Cook, Bougainville, and Scott, he has a predilection to take action over administration, a temptation to take the greatest risks onto himself. But unlike most early explorers, he has an almost compulsive compassion for the plight of others, alien as well as human, and must continually fight the temptation to risk many to save one. The casting of Kirk took quite some time. Roddenberry's first choice was television actor Jack Lord, who at the time was most famous for TV western Stony Burke, and for appearing alongside Sean Connery in Dr. No as the first big screen version of Felix Leiter. Lord, however, turned it down. Roddenberry's next choice was none other than Lloyd Bridges, which is kind of hilarious looking at it now. At the time he was known for various thrillers and westerns. He would go on to appear in Battlestar Galactica as Admiral Kane, and of course the slew of Zucker Brothers comedies which he excelled in. He also turned down the role. Eventually, as we all know, Canadian TV and film actor William Shatner landed the part of Captain Kirk. In execution, Star Trek the original series was largely successful in depicting Captain Kirk as intended. Strong scripts and strong performances characterized him almost exactly as Gene Roddenberry's original pitch. He's a dab hand at fisticuffs and phaser fights, but almost routinely haunted by various regrets and constantly shouldering the heavy burden of command. However, a key element would come to alter the larger pop culture perception of the character. Many TOS fans will be familiar with an implied budding romance between Captain Kirk and yeoman's Janice Rand, played by Grace Lee Whitney. Network execs, however, weren't so keen on having Kirk tied down to one particular romantic interest, and so Rand was soon written out of the show. From there, it became routine for Kirk to have one-off love interests almost every other episode. This outer space ladies' man persona is something which would go on to define what many audiences came to think of the Captain. Because of this recurring element, combined with the often awkward fight choreography and William Shatner's unique style of line delivery, the complex and layered character Gene Roddenberry had envisaged wasn't what a lot more casual TV audiences saw. This is something which is still parodied and joked about today, and is an attitude toward the character which was even reflected in future installments of the franchise. In the big screen outings for the original series cast, the writers actually did a pretty good job of moving the character on. The Wrath of Khan famously has a running theme of Kirk feeling old and wanting to get back into space for some action. Even his reputation as a ladies' man comes back to bite him as he unexpectedly runs into his estranged son and former lover Carol Marcus. For movies 2, 3, 4, and 6, Kirk being older and less of an action hero is something which is explored very well. However, the perception of the character as a fist-throwing lady killer is something which does pop up in the movies too, but not quite in a good way. In the motion picture, he basically seizes command of the Enterprise away from its new commander Captain Decker, and the movie never really punishes Kirk for doing what is pretty much a dick move. In the search for Spock, Kirk has some classic fisticuffs with Klingon Captain Krug, which includes some very obvious stunt doubles. But easily the most egregious of these examples is in The Final Frontier, in which we're supposed to believe a 58-year-old William Shatner is capable of free climbing El Capitan. Overall, this warped view of the original character doesn't really ruin the stories which have been told in the original series, or even most of the movies, but it is this view which had to be considered when the Star Trek universe spawned a new timeline in the Kelvin timeline. A quick break here, don't worry, it's not an advert. What this is a call to ask you to subscribe to the channel. According to my analytics, over half the people who watch my Lore Evolution videos aren't subscribed to the channel. If you like these videos, if you like this series, then just go ahead and hit the subscribe button as well as the bell icon. I make at least one Lore Evolution every month, and subscribing is the best way to make sure you don't miss an upload. So for the Kelvin timeline movies, across the 3 we have so far, Kirk actually has a pretty consistent journey and character arc throughout the films. In the first movie from 2009, the ladies' man fisticuff silliness is on full display here. As implied in numerous lines of dialogue from the original series and movies, Kirk being a headstrong, rebellious cadet at the Academy is something which makes sense. I've seen the argument that Kirk comes off as a bit too brash and smug in the first film, which I totally understand, honestly. He bucks authority and shrugs off the regulations to get the job done, and is rewarded for it. He's the one thinking outside the box, fully committed to himself being right. Really, this is an expression of that latter half of Roddenberry's original description, but it can go too far in this particular film, which is why the heavily flawed sequel Into Darkness goes to extreme lengths to batter into Kirk's head that he isn't as great as he thinks, and his way of doing things won't always get the job done. As ill-advised as the inclusion of the Wrath of Khan elements were, it still works as the next logical step in his journey as a character. Until finally in Beyond, we have a seasoned Captain Kirk who ends the story fully committed to Starfleet's mission statement. We have that captain again who throws himself into the action while also feeling the burden of his command. It's an arc across the trilogy which reconciles the complexities of the original pitch with what wider audiences have come to expect from the character. There are a wealth of Star Trek novels out there, with many featuring Captain Kirk, but probably the most notable are the Shatnerverse novels. This is the term given to a series of novels written by William Shatner himself, and concerning the adventures of Kirk in the 24th century, and honestly, these are quite terrible. This novel series is honestly one of the worst examples of William Shatner's ego rearing its head. In this continuity, Kirk is resurrected from death after Star Trek Generations by a Borg-Romulan alliance to be used as a weapon in defeating Captain Picard. From there, we're subjected to stories which constantly bring Kirk out of retirement to yet again be the galaxy's hero. The self-importance of the character in these stories is so cringeworthy, but not nearly as bad as the self-aggrandizing blurb which appears on every one of these novels. For almost 3 decades, millions of television viewers and moviegoers around the world have thrilled to the exciting adventures of the most successful science fiction creation of all time, Star Trek. And during all that time, William Shatner has portrayed Star Trek's most dynamic hero, Captain James Tiberius Kirk, a gallant commander of the legendary Starship Enterprise and her crew. Now, William Shatner brings his unique blend of talents as an actor, writer, director, and producer, as well as best-selling author and creator of the acclaimed tech war novels and television series, to tell the story only he can, of Captain Kirk's greatest adventure. Really, these novels amount to William Shatner's own Star Trek fanfiction, and it's frankly pretty bad stuff. So there we have Captain Kirk, a fist-fighting, syllable-staggering ladies' man who also happens to be a truly nuanced and compelling character. With strange new worlds on the horizon, perhaps we'll see yet another side of the iconic Starship Captain. Thanks for watching. If you like what I do and want to see more videos, subscribe and hit the bell icon to stay up to date on all my new uploads. If you like what I do and want to help the channel grow, join me over on my Patreon where you can see videos like this early. Speaking of which, I'd like to quickly thank all of my patrons who are now appearing on screen. Have a good one, and as always, live long and prosper.